all are requested to put their audio on a mute mode, so I can start and open up the session. Good evening all. My name is Prabhakar Patil and I am a Vice President of MILS Alumni Association. Welcome to the today's webinar on IR challenges in the context of COVID-19 situation. Thank you each and everyone you for being participating in today's webinar. We have an overwhelming response for this webinar. Till today, more than 500 people have been registered for this webinar. And this consists of student as well as a professional union members. So many people are joining today for today's webinar. On behalf of MILS Association, I welcome our guest of honor and guest speakers, Dr. Rajan Mehrotra and Advocate Bharat Goel. You know, both are eminent speakers. And we also have Dr. R.M. Tungare, who is like a facilitating today's program. So he's the ex-director of our MILS Association, MILS Institute. I thank and appreciate efforts of our committee members, particularly our president, Mr. Ahire, then Advocate Prakash Devdas, Rajesh Bhagwe, Devendra Palav, then R.G. Patil and A.D. Patil. And we also have a project who has supported us for arranging this webinar. So she is like a backbone of today's, everything as technical support has been provided by Prajakta. So thank you everyone. Once again, I will welcome all participants and guest speaker. Before getting started the webinar, I wanted to make clear certain rules. All participants are requested to put their video as well as audio on a mute mode. There will be a separate Q&A session, which all your questions will be answered by the distinguished guest panel speakers. So you are requested to raise your question using the Q&A window, which is specially provided for this webinar. After me, Mr. Ahire will be taking over the charge of the session. He will be introducing about the association part, and thereafter Rajesh Bhagwe will introduce the facility. So thank you very much once again for overwhelming response. And with this I hand over to, I request to Sri Ahire sir to briefly tell about our association.
My name is Ramesh Ahire, President of the Alumni Association. Welcome to everybody in this webinar. We are here to discuss the most important current topic, industrial relations in the context of COVID-19. Objects of the association, I'm just explaining.
Yes.
To promote welfare of the alumni of the institute, mentoring the students for their professional acumen, personality development, and creating mentor-mentee relationships for the alumni, and such many more objects. At present, we are having 150 memberships. This credit goes to our Vice President, Mr. Prabhakar Patil, and Joint Secretary, Mr. Himanshu Bhatt. Indeed, to mention here that our alumni, Mr. Himanshu Bhatt, presently working with Hindalco as HR executive, is at Assam posting, and he registered more than 50 participants from his company from Assam for today's webinar. Give him big hands to Mr. Bhatt. With this, I appeal to all past and present students to become members of our alumni association and make it to the level of IIT Powai Bombay Alumni and Sydney Alumni Association, Mumbai. With this, I conclude my speech. Thank you.
Yes, Rajesh, thank you, Iris sir. I request Rajesh to briefly introduce Dr. Tungare sir.
Friends and HR fraternity, our colleagues. Actually, Dr. R.M. Tungare requires no introduction. We all know him for his sterling contribution as a director of late Narayan Meghaji Lokhande, Maharashtra Institute of Labor Studies, Mumbai. As we are all aware, he has more than 40 years of teaching experience, out of which 25 years in professional category. He is, of course, qualified as MA, MBA, PhD Economics, and was awarded Teacher Fellowship by the University Grants Commission, New Delhi, for completion of his PhD. He is recipient of Bharat Vidya Ratan Award of International Business Council, New Delhi, for his contribution in the field of higher education. He has also guided so many doctoral students in diverse field of labor studies, developmental economics, commerce, and management. He has also served as a member, College Development Council, nominated by Vice Chancellor, University of Mumbai twice. Friends, he is going to be our facilitator for this program today, as we have two very eminent guests today. So now I request Dr. Tungare to take over from me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rajesh, for a very lovely and generous introduction about me. I'm really happy to be associated with this inaugural webinar organized by Alumni Association of late Narayan Meghaji Lokhande, Maharashtra Institute of Labor Studies, as its ex-director. I'm really happy that so many alumni have joined this webinar, and some of the attendees are from abroad also. So in that context, it is really an international webinar. And to be associated with this webinar as a facilitator is certainly a proud privilege. This webinar has taken up a very relevant topic for discussion. That is challenges of industrial relations in the context of COVID-19. I say it is very relevant in two aspects. Number one, immediately after the pandemic, which is the situation is unprecedented in human history, as all of you know, we had lockdown. And perhaps this lockdown is the biggest in the world history. Though we have not calculated, millions of man-days have been lost. So many workers started going back to their villages barefoot, and there has been reverse migration also. In the light of COVID situation, I'm sure that medical experts say one doesn't know how long it will continue. And perhaps to be normal becomes difficult, and therefore we have been talking about new normal. And in this new normal of where the managing things will be almost uncertainties, in the light of uncertainties, we will have to work out different strategies, we will have to find out different tools and techniques to manage the workforce. The second aspect of relevance is only a couple of days back, Industrial Relations Code has been approved by Government of India. And this is a very significant development to my mind. Passing the Industrial Relations Code at the national level will have a far-reaching impact at the ground level for managing industrial relations at the enterprise level. And therefore, we have begun with this topic. And even in social distancing, we are trying to keep the social dialogue. I think this dialogue, this is the beginning of the social dialogue with the stakeholders, and therefore association deserves compliments for that. Now for discussing this subject, we have very competent panel. The best panel available to discuss the topic of industrial relations and the challenges. We have with us Dr. Rajen Mehrotra. Welcome to you. Dr. Rajen Mehrotra is a known figure in the field of HR, IR. He has 4 decades of experience in the international civil service, industry and academics. He was with International Labour Organization, ILO, as employees representative for South Asia. And in that capacity, he traveled very widely, and possibly he is the person who has got international feel of the problem, what is going on abroad. Besides that, he has got an excellent rapport with the academic world. He was professor and dean of National Institute of Industrial Engineering, where he was managing master's degree program in industrial engineering. And then, if I recall properly, he was the youngest dean of NITI. Dr. Mehrotra, Rajen Mehrotra, is associated with number of Indian institutes of management. He teaches the module of industrial relations. He is a faculty member of Indian Institute of Management, Shillong, Indian Institute of Management, Udaipur, and from the IIM stream, he is the most sought after faculty. What I like most of Dr. Rajen Mehrotra, he kept in touch with the academic world, not only the world of work, but the academic world. And to my mind, it's a very fine combination of theory and practice. We have another equally competent panel member, Advocate Bharat Goel. I welcome you. Advocate Bharat Goel graduated from Government Law College, started practicing independently in Labour Court, Industrial Court, Industrial Tribunal. As all of us know that he represents a number of companies, including multinationals in High Court. He is Vice President of Industrial Relations Institute of India, and that capacity, he addresses number of conferences, number of webinars, teaching practitioners in the field of industrial relations. A very competent panel. And this panel, as I told you, that they will be speaking to you for 20 minutes each. But to me, being a facilitator for the seminar, I think that any discussion we have, we need to have some framework for discussion. And here, obviously, I refer to the Dunlop's model of industrial relations. Dunlop in late 50s, he propounded a model of industrial relations system in which he says the actors in the field of industrial relations, that is, employers being represented by professional management, employees being represented by unions, and the state, obviously the welfare state, they have interactions, they have continuous interactions. They have social dialogue. they have to introspect in terms of their role. And possibly, in today's context, in a very dynamic setting, they have to see that their role becomes more and more positively interdependent. We must talk with each other. They must have a social dialogue. And this is the time that they should be understanding their own role, defining their own role, examining their role, and they should see to it that the things are settled amicably, because ultimately all of us, we want amicable settlement. We are looking for industrial peace and prosperity. With this brief premise for discussion, I'm expecting Dr. Rajan Mehrotra to be, what I should be saying, to the opening batsman. And I'm sure that he will provide us not only the picture at macro level in the light of Industrial Relations Code passed by central government, and he will be enlightening us as to the critical issues at the enterprise level. Dr. Rajan Mehrotra, please.
Mr. Ahire, the president of the association, Mr. Prabhakar Patil, the vice president, Mr. Rajesh Bagwe, the vice president, all office bearers of the alumni association, Dr. R.M. Tungare, my fellow panelists, Advocate Bharat Goel, and the MILS alumni that is attending this webinar, plus a large number of participants that are also from non-alumni plus others. I also know there are participants that are attending in the enterprises where I have worked earlier, and all the students that are attending. I'm extremely grateful to the Alumni Association for inviting me to share my thoughts. And I'm also grateful to Dr. Tungare for the excellent words in which he spoke about me. When I look in the city of Mumbai, there are two institutions which are more than 60 years old, which have given the personal managers and the IR managers in the city. One is Marat Institute of Labor Studies, whose name has changed, and the other is Tata Institute of Science. Now, whenever any people from these institutes call me, I readily accept an invitation for a simple reason that they have been colleagues that have worked with me. And I must say I have learned a lot in terms of IR as a manufacturing man from them. And in fact, they have done my apprenticeship. So whenever they invite me, I always agree, because I look at it as an occasion for me to repay the immense debt that I owe to this fraternity for having educated me. When I look in terms of what Dr. Tungare started off and mentioned, the John Dunlop model, and he said, let's look at it. I like to take off from the John Dunlop model. And when we look in terms of industrial relation challenges in the context of COVID-19, as that is the theme of the webinar that the organizers have planned, I would look at this at three levels in terms of what are the IR challenges. One is the challenges that are at the national level, something about which Dr. Tungare just mentioned about the Industrial Relations Code, which the cabinet just approved based on the recommendations that have come from the Parliamentary Standing Committee. Then you look in terms of industrial relations at a sectorial level, and then industrial relations at the enterprise level at which most of you operate. I'll delve on the first two briefly and then get down to the enterprise level. But when we look at the John Dunlop model, which was brought out by Dr. Tungare, he basically put forward a theory that there are actors, and these actors predominantly are what he rightly mentioned, the trade unions that represent the workmen, the employer organizations or professional managers that represent them, and the government. These are the three major actors. But there are other concepts also which is there. When John Dunlop built up this concept, he not only looked at the actors, he also said that these actors have an ideology. Now the ideologies can keep changing, but when I look in the context of India post 1991, from a closed economy, we became an open economy. When I look at the third is that when he referred to the John Dunlop model, there is also a context. And in fact, we have really rightly looking at this webinar in the context of COVID-19. So I'm going to confine my discussions with reference to the context of COVID-19, which is the context. And the fourth, he said that they're all governed by the rules, laws, legislation. And when you look at it, the laws have not changed other than in the COVID-19, the two laws that came about as I see. One was what came under the Disaster Management Act, which has had its own implications, on which Advocate Bharat Goel will obviously deal at greater length. And then there were also amendments that came about by various state governments. And let's try and see how this took place in IR context at the national level. When I look at the national level, I look at three examples to quote IR in the national level. One is when you look at the Disaster Management Act that came out, implying from 25th March that employers are liable to pay wages to the workmen or to all the employees for the period of the lockdown. Originally, the lockdown was for 21 days, then it got extended by 15 days, then basically it went on into 3 phases. And let's look what was the approach of the employers. The employers went to the Supreme Court to try and see if they can get this stuck down. Supreme Court at various modes has given certain decisions. The matter is still sub judice, which is something that will be dealt with by Advocate Bharat Goel. But what really happened is enterprises were called upon to pay the salaries. When it came to payment of salaries and wages of March, because the payment has to be made, most companies pay it on 1st April, but if you look under the Payment of Wages Act, you're liable to pay it before 7th or 10th of the month. So quite many went and paid the March salary because the salary is normally calculated 26th to 25th of the month in most companies. So that's how people paid it. But when it came to the April salary, enterprises had their own approach, and that's how the employers did rush to the court. It's a matter. So when you look in terms of the John Dunlop model and you look at IR, in the context of the national level, people went to court. Let me look in terms of what happened with reference to various state governments. When you look at state governments, they came out with certain legislations in terms of, there were states in India, which when I look at it was the states of Gujarat, Madhya Pradesh, Himachal Pradesh, Uttar Pradesh, Haryana, Rajasthan, Punjab, Uttarakhand, Maharashtra, Odisha, Assam, Bihar, and Karnataka that wanted to suspend certain laws. Its applicability itself gave a tenure for it. Some of them came out that the working from 8 hours should go to 12 hours. Some said that it will be with overtime, some said without overtime. I'm quite sure Bharat Goel will deal with it. There are participants that are also from Assam, so one needs to see what are the implications there. But let's try and understand when this happened at the national level, how did the unions react? There were 10 unions from India of the national level, which is INTUC, AITUC, HMS, SITU, AITUK, TUCC, SEWA, AICCTU, LPF, UTUC, that wrote to the Director General of the ILO, asking him to intervene in terms of how can the country come out with such legislation bypassing all things. And let me also tell you what happened at the international level. The office of the Director General of ILO wrote to Government of India. Some states have changed it, some still continue. Most of the states had come out with an ordinance or with an executive order. In certain cases, if these have to become acts, then they have to go to the president's assent. So some places it is continuing, some other changes. This is the second example I'm giving you in terms of how IR is changing at the national level when you look in the context of COVID. And I'm really drawing all this from what Dr. Tungare started by looking at the Dunlop model. I'll give another third example, and I want to bring about what has changed in the Dunlop model applicability when I look at India. Invariably, we look at the actors as basically the three, that is the employers, the trade unions, and the government. The media has become exceedingly powerful, you can see. The way the media started coming up with reference to the migrant labor, originally there were people that filed public interest litigations, but the courts did not act. And you can clearly see Sumoto, the Supreme Court acted in it and gave directives that the state shall take care in terms of travel of the migrant labor and the railways will provide for food. I'm just bringing about that when you look in a context of what is happening at the national level, you have to recognize that the Dunlop model has its own implications, but I see new actors entering into the field in the context of COVID-19, which was not there earlier in the traditional IR model that we see. I'll then like to look in terms of IR at the sectoral level. And when I look at IR at the sectoral level, I would mention that there are certain sectors which get heavily impacted because of COVID-19. And we must recognize that these sectors are very different. Whenever you look at travel and tourism, hotels, restaurants, automobiles, passenger transport, goods transport, capital goods industry, film production, movie theaters, entertainment, trade fairs, event management, malls, real estate, look at all of them have been badly affected with reference to the revenue. Now, what is really going to happen is that majority of them will relook in terms of restructuring at the sectoral level because their revenues have fallen so badly that they will have to try and see that somehow or the other they get the revenue to survive. In quite a few cases, their revenues are less than 50%. Most of these are going to look in terms of what will happen, that either they will have to innovate to find out an answer to get revenue, or basically they'll have to have IR problems because they won't have the money to pay. Now, my own interpretation in some of this is what's going to happen. And since large number of you are from Maharashtra and have been an alumni of MILS, most of you are conversant that you have an MRQ Pulp Act in the state of Maharashtra. I, in my career, have handled a lot of litigation where you see unions would rush to the court and bring a stay order. And please be clear, it became a nightmare vacating stay orders also. Yet. I will not be surprised, and I am raising this intentionally in the context of Maharashtra. This will not apply throughout the country because labor being a concurrent subject of the constitution, unions will take an approach either to talk. Unions are not taking the old time approach, which was of calling a mass strike. If I look at the labor codes when it came about, the central trade unions had gone on a mass strike that took place in January, 8th of January, when they were opposed to the labor codes. This is not the approach the unions will take today, because A, it is not possible to go on strikes at this type of a juncture, though there will be certain troubles. Why I brought that these sectors are in bad shape, and unless they innovate, my own hunch is I see some of them going through the bankruptcy code in this country. Though what has happened is that when you recollect, the finance minister really gave a leeway that the bankruptcy code will not be applied for 1 year, but there will either these companies will get sold or there will be new buyers and you will have a new management. Some of them will become sick. I remember there was a time when enterprises in India became sick right up till 70s. They used to be nationalized. In fact, those of you who are from Maharashtra can see Richardson Kudas 1972. When you walk through in Baikla, on the left-hand side, just before you come on the flyover, in 1972, it was nationalized. Please be clear, companies that will become sick, the present government is not going to nationalize. So either there will be a buyer or they'll have to live in sickness or they will go into liquidation. Not that I want to pay paint a very negative picture, but I see that these types of enterprises will have to find their own answers to survive. Otherwise, survival is going to be a toughness. Other part I will look in terms of sectoral. When you look at trade union movement, there were sectoral type of agreements that used to take place. Unfortunately, the sectoral agreements have vanished. The textile industry used to have sectoral agreements at one time. I clearly see in my own experience that I've worked with ACC, the Cement Manufacturers Association signs a sectoral agreement with all the cement plants in the country. When you look in terms of the banking sector, the nationalized banks sign settlement. And in fact, today, Saturday that you are having is the first Saturday of the month. And it is a full working day in the bank. Earlier, if you recollect, Saturday used to be a half day. So it became that second and fourth Saturdays would become holidays. Now, these are sectoral agreements. Similarly, when I look at the plantation sector, because there are some people from Assam attending, the plantation sector has settlements with reference to the tea states. Similarly, in South, you have Upasi, United Planters Association of Southern India, where the settlements take place. Now, what is going to happen? These sectors where sectoral agreements take place will still have the long-term settlement taking place, but the capacity to pay. Some of the other unions' approach in long-term settlements in industrial relations has been that नहीं हमारा जो नया करार होना है वो पुराने से ज़्यादा होना चाहिए. So the rise in settlement must be higher than what was last time. Employers are positively going to take up that, which is not possible. Basically, we are losing money. We cannot give the same types of increases. So this is going to be, but I also see in these sectors, unions and management that matured, they will manage to sign settlement. Then after that, I would come at the enterprise level. When I look at the enterprise level, we must recognize that when you talk of industrial relations at the enterprise level, and if I take the Dunlop model, here what happens is government at times does become an intervening partner, but not into a large extent. Here, invariably, people look at what has been the approach of the management, what has been the relationships in the past. Have I a positive, have I a negative relationship? And people basically try and handle it out at the plant level. And agreements do take place, but to a large extent, when I look at industrial relations at the enterprise level, industrial relations is enterprise specific. It has nothing to do with the macroeconomic and the John Dunlop model that we take up. People try to resolve out. Here, I clearly see that there will be pressures on companies. One is basically because of the lockdown, there is going to be that enterprises would have reduction and rationalization of manpower. Enterprises are likely to reduce their intake of contract labor. What is also happening, given the zone, everywhere you're not permitted to bring in 100% people. You're permitted to bring in 50% or 1/3 the people. Service sector is quite different, where you can operate from home. Manufacturing sector is, the goods have to be made at the plant and you will have to bring in people. Now, if your total demand has fallen for the products that you're making, you're obviously going to have a lesser intake of manpower. Now, when you don't call people for work, the issue will come that do you pay them wages or not? So there can be companies that may have delay in payment because of the non-availability of funds. There can be desire by certain companies to reduce benefits. A lot of companies in India I have seen, and the prospecting one have signed long-term settlements wherein you pay more than the statutory bonus under the Bonus Act. And when you pay more than the statutory benefit under the Bonus Act, if you don't have the money, you are going to say that I would like to challenge this settlement and change it. Now, this will create IR problems when you don't want to pay. When you have a cash crunch, you'll have. I also see another IR problem is ensuring safety of all employees working at the plant to ensure that nobody gets COVID-19. This is going to become a major issue in terms of everybody is mortally scared, because what happens is COVID-19, people anticipate कि अगर मुझको COVID हो गया तो मैं जिंदा बचूंगा या नहीं. Now, you can keep on saying the statistical analysis in India is that mortality rate is low, we have a higher resistance power, it is 3%, it is 4%. please be clear that when a split takes place, it will become an IR issue in the plant where people, some not wanting to come, some wanting to come. I'll give you simple examples. Even if you look in terms of Maharashtra State Road Transport, Maharashtra State Road Transport has decided not to pay its drivers more than 50% and its employees more than 50% of the salary for the month of May. They have been suffering losses. It's a state government undertaking. Now, while we are referring this to the state governments and others, I can tell you this is going to happen at the enterprise level also. I'm not wishing something bad. Please don't misunderstand me. But I also see that companies will have to handle this type of situation. And all of you who are from the HR fraternity will have to face these types of problems. There will also be demands for financial support for treatment with reference to people impacted by COVID-19. And enterprises will have to take care. I have just tried to bring out the issues. Obviously, you have to take corrective actions, try and build up trust. And I look at one positive thing in terms of the context today. Large number of enterprises, when you look at the employees, practically every worker, including contract worker, has a mobile phone. Please use this as a methodology of communication with people that are not working also. When I look at the mobile phone connectivity in this country, it is 100 crore. While we have a population of 125 crore, which means every family has a mobile phone. I'm not referring to laptop connectivity, network connectivity and others, which is about 60 million. I'm referring with reference to this. Please try and communicate, and you can send an SMS message. A lot of people, their families are distressed in terms of the workmen. I clearly see in the context of the enterprises, it is a shrinking pie. See, a lot of people in HR keep on, we must expand the pie and share it. This is the domain where the pie in majority of the companies is going to shrink. It is not going to go up. It is true that rich companies like FMCG and some other bigger companies have tremendous cash reserves. Their profitability, they can afford to pay. When I look at others in terms of construction, you look at larger companies, they have resilience to pay. This is not true with a large number of companies in this country. And I'm quite sure this will lead to certain amount of litigation. I also see the union not taking very aggressive stands. Let me be also honest, because the days are gone when you could organize the type of strike. Even if I want to organize a morcha, I'll have to maintain social distancing in a morcha, and people are scared. There will be some spontaneous type of assignment that take place, but this is what is likely to happen. With these words, I once again thank the organizers for having invited me to speak. I've tried to confine my presentation to about 20-25 minutes as requested by Dr. Tungare. And with this word, I once again thank the organizers for having invited me to share my experience with reference to what I see the challenges that are faced in industrial nations. And I'm basically referring it only in the context of COVID-19. I'm not referring to the challenges otherwise. With these words, thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Dr. Rajan Mehrotra, for providing an excellent perspective. What I gather is that we have been talking about not only the survival of fittest, but possibly survival of the fastest. You have also mentioned that there has to be some human approach in industrial relations, and that's really fine. I mean, the practitioners in the field of industrial relations, they need to understand that we have the limitations in terms of economic cake. The size of the economic cake is shrinking. That is what you brought it to our notice. Now, as far as Advocate Goel is concerned, Advocate Goel, you are an expert in the field of employment laws. And in the light of industrial relations code, we have been facing a very different kind of a situation as far as context is concerned. So in the context of this industrial relations code, where I've been told, yesterday I was listening to India Development Debate, are being told that there is going to be fixed term employment, which will have far-reaching implications. Even the present norm of 100 employees for seeking permission for closure and all, that could be extended to 200, 300, something of that kind, and that is just by notification, simple notification. So against the light of this, I'm sure that not many questions might be lingering in the minds of our participants as to how do we handle, how do we tackle the situation. Especially, we have social distancing. Again, we have work from home. And to my mind, work from home is going to be almost a permanent kind of a thing. And so many companies have been thinking that let it be the permanent feature. And in the social distancing, I for one strongly feel as a social scientist that let us not lose the social dialogue. So against this backdrop, we are looking towards you, sir, for getting us very concrete picture as to what will be the situation to be handled at the plant level, at the enterprise level. Advocate Goel, please.
Dr. Tungare, Dr. Rajan Mehrotra, Mr. Ahire, Mr. Prabhakar Patil, Mr. Rajesh Bagwe, office bearers of the Alumni Association, and all the participants. I thank all of you for giving me this opportunity to speak on today's webinar. COVID-19 has generated a phase of uncertainty and anxiety in business all around. The social distancing requirements are going to lead to changes in the workplace. Employers are being permitted to restart their activities with either 25% or 33% or 50% of workforce. The operating with such reduced workforce is going to pose challenges. Certainly, there is going to be a number mismatch or a work mismatch. Work is definitely going to be adversely affected. The deployment of workmen will never be at 100% capacity. Some of the employees will get redundant and will be required to get separated. Even amongst the limited number of employees retained will be the fear about transmission of COVID-19. Employers will be also required to reconfigure the workspaces to allow for social distancing requirements. The layout of the plants will get adversely affected. Employers are not geared up for this environment as employees have been working in small spaces. There is therefore going to be a new dynamics for which employers are not prepared for. Employers have now to get accustomed to checking temperatures of the employees, following social distancing requirements, ensure that employees wash their hands with sanitizers and wear their masks. These would be great challenges arising out of these regulatory guidelines affecting the employees. Now, there are also challenges governing the workplace operations. Around 20th March 2020, there were advisories issued by the state governments not to terminate the services of the workmen and make full payment of wages to them. Thereafter, on 24th March 2020, the central government imposed the national lockdown. On 29th March 2020, came the order of the Ministry of Home Affairs, whereby employers were directed to pay full wages to the workmen by treating them on duty during the period of lockdown. Now, even in the state of Maharashtra, there was a government resolution dated 31st March 2020, whereby all workers, including contract labor, temporaries, daily wage earners, were required to be assumed on work and they were required to get their full salaries. A batch of petitions were filed before the Supreme Court challenging this order of the Ministry of Home Affairs. On 12th June 2020, there has been an interim order passed by the Honorable Supreme Court whereby the employers can negotiate with the unions and the workmen regarding payment of wages for the lockdown period of 54 days or for any other period as applicable in any particular state when establishments were closed due to lockdown. Now, if these negotiations do not result in settlement between the parties, then the labor authorities could be approached and the labor authorities would call the parties for negotiating a settlement. If no settlement is arrived thereafter, then the parties have to wait for the final outcome of the petitions, which are likely to be heard in this month. The Supreme Court has further ordered that no coercive action should be taken against the employers for not adhering to the MHA order till the disposal of the petitions. Now, basically, the Supreme Court, in a sense, has encouraged the process of negotiations between the employer and employees to solve the issues bilaterally, and therefore this is basically a containment order. The Ministry of Home Affairs, in this order dated 29th March 2020, had relied upon a statute, that is the Disaster Management Act 2005, which is not essentially meant for employment relationships. Very recently, even the Maharashtra government had imposed a ban on fee hikes by private schools, whereby resolutions were passed under the provisions of the Disaster Management Act and the Epidemic Diseases Act. Now, this order was challenged before the Honorable Bombay High Court, and the Bombay High Court has taken a view that the order of the Maharashtra government imposing a ban on fee hikes is prima facie without jurisdiction when it had invoked the provisions of the Disaster Management Act. Now, High Court, however, has directed the schools to consider giving parents an option to pay fees by way of installments online. Therefore, those employers who have been compliant and have paid employees wages as per the MHA order dated 29th March 2020, their advantage will lie in earning employees' goodwill, whereas as far as the other employers are concerned, a balancing solution may emerge, negotiations may take place so as to avoid any further litigations in courts. Now, when an employer operates with reduced manpower, some workmen are likely to become redundant. The core issue is, will the government permit the employers to downsize its permanent workforce by giving them permission to retrench or close down their establishments? Companies having less than 100 workmen may do so, but then the difficult times will result in belt tightening. There are uncertainties for employees, even employed in the managerial and supervisory categories. Their careers will have to be jump-started with new beginnings. There are going to be cases of unemployment, handling new responsibilities. All this will become the new normal. There will be pay cuts, lower bonuses, payouts in companies which are strapped for cash. Difficult times will last longer as the economy will take time to recover. Even in the manufacturing world, it will become more high-tech, tech-intensive, and tech-savvy with Internet of Things, 3D printing, fourth industrial revolution, which initially started with steam revolution, the electrical revolution, followed by the electronic revolution, and now the digital revolution. Then the 5G cellular technology network, artificial intelligence, revolutionizing the workplaces. Workmen and employees will be required to learn new roles, otherwise they will become irrelevant or redundant. Even the laws governing the workplaces are also changing rapidly. Recently, we have heard of various state governments amending the labor laws, like the state of UP announcing that they are going to suspend the labor laws for a period of 3 years. Similarly, the state of MP in exempting industries from the provisions of the ID Act, except Chapter 5A, then Section 25N, 25O, and a further few more sections of Chapter 5B for the next 1,000 days. Then 11 industries being exempted from the provisions of MPIR Act, which is a local legislation applicable in the state of MP. Then certain states permitting 12 hours shift at single rates of overtime. Now, all these are going to, in fact, increase the hardships of workers and unions at the workplace. Now, as far as the general impact is concerned, as we all know, that the definition of industry, which has been given a very expansive meaning by the Honorable Supreme Court way back in the case of Bangalore Water Works case, more and more informal establishments are covered under the ID Act, and in appropriate cases, the workmen have secured reliefs of reinstatement and back wages. Now, pursuant to these orders passed by the local state government, exempting labor laws in certain states, it would so happen that employers could remove even permanent workmen without paying retrenchment compensation, gratuity. Then services of existing workmen would be terminated and they could be reappointed on fresh terms and conditions. There could be examples, cases of closures and retrenchments without paying retrenchment compensation or closure compensation. No applicability as far as Section 9A is concerned, and then the service conditions of the employees could be prejudicially affected. No requirement for employers even to pay ESI and PF contributions. So therefore, in a situation where in hospitals, in ESI hospitals, the doctors, nurses, and health workers are not paid wages, even the functioning of these hospitals will get adversely affected. In respect of PF accumulations, at what rate interest has to be paid, since the PF Act would not apply. No liability to pay bonus or gratuity. In cases of summary dismissals, no recourse to employees to challenge, as the ID Act would not apply. Even as far as the Contract Labor Regulation Act, the requirements to obtain registration, license, all that will be inapplicable. So therefore, these would be the core issues which would arise in such situations. Now, what are the options which would be available for employers in such cases? Now, one such option would be reduction in wages or reduction in benefits. Now, that would certainly be a better option than a job loss instead of retrenching or discharging an employee, and could be a win-win situation for both employers and employees. Now, since the cash flows of employers are getting adversely affected, so therefore there has to be a balance between the long-term interests of the employers and the short-term needs of the employees. And therefore, there would have to be steps such as either graded reduction in wages or partial deferment in wages. That may become necessary to maintain the stability and viability of the employers. Even deferred amounts would have to be paid to employees at a later date as and when the financial condition of the company improves in future. Employers have been taking consent of the employees by asking them to make endorsements that yes, they are confirming the terms and conditions as contained in the revised letters being issued to them, and that they agree to abide by the terms and conditions thereof. The other option would be laying off the employees who are in the workmen category. Now, when do I lay off? On account of either failure, refusal, or inability. My inability to provide employment to a workman on account of shortage of coal, power, raw material, or accumulation of stocks or breakdown of machinery, or natural calamity. Now, COVID-19 can certainly be termed as a natural calamity, or for any other connected reason. Now, under Section 25C of the ID Act, I am required to pay 50% wages, basic and DA. Now, layoff on account of a natural calamity may not even require permission of appropriate government where there are more than 100 workmen under the provisions of 25M1 of the ID Act. The other option which is available for the employers in respect of workman category is to give a notice of change under section 9A of the ID Act, but then it is a long drawn process. Once it is given and it is objected by the employee and a dispute is raised, then the matter goes in for adjudication, and during the pendency of these proceedings, it will not be permissible for the employers to carry out any changes. The other option available to the employers is to enter into a settlement with the functioning union. A settlement could always be arrived at for a temporary period in respect of reduction of wages. A rational union in this unprecedented situation may agree to a logical proposal of an employer for its survival, which is only beneficial to the workmen. In this regard, I will refer to one instance which had, in fact, happened in one of my clients' establishment, which is a cement company having factories all across the country. Now, this particular establishment was a cement plant which was a wet process plant. Now, this wet process plant is an obsolete technological plant having the most old and outdated technology. It was a 100-year-old plant. Now, this plant had become economically unviable on a standalone basis. The company took a business decision that we want to sell off this plant. Now, under the labor laws, there is no difficulty as far as the selling off or transfer of an establishment is concerned by invoking the provisions of section 25FF of the ID Act. There is no requirement to obtain any permission of the appropriate government, even if there are more than 100 workmen. The company decided to sell off the plant. The union got to know about this decision whereby the company wanted to sell off the plant. Now, the workmen were very apprehensive about the future. They were in fact unaware as to who is going to be the prospective employer. Now, what the union did was, the union approached the management and they said that we have as many as 600 workmen in the plant. We are agreeable for a reduction in wages to the extent of 50%, but please don't sell off the plant. So finally, what had happened was the management gave it a thought. Again, they reconsidered its decision. The management thereupon decided to convert this wet process plant into a dry process plant, which would require a huge capital expenditure. The company discussed with the union and the company suggested that instead of reduction in wages, we will prefer an option of reduction in manpower. Suppose if you are able to help us in getting what you call manpower reduced to the extent of 50%, then we can certainly go in for this option and we will reconsider our decision as far as sale of the plant is concerned. The union readily agreed to this proposal. The company introduced a VRS scheme. Finally, the 50% of the employees opted for VRS, and ultimately the company could convert this wet process cement plant into a dry process cement plant, could carry out the expansion and could achieve reduction in manpower. Now, the bottom line here is that even if the company had agreed for reduction in wages, then certainly the reduction in wages could have been possible by way of a settlement arrived at between the employer and the functioning union. Now, as far as the employees who are non-workmen and who are in the managerial cadre, the company can always enter into an agreement with them for renegotiation of their wages and obtain individual consents. There are cases of some mobility service employers such as Zomato, Bounce, Oyo Hotels. They have in fact offered employees additional stock options in lieu of wages. So therefore, the employees have retained their jobs and even the financial burden on the company has been reduced. Now, there is also the emergence as far as shift in employment arrangements are concerned. That is the emergence of gig and platform workers or employing employees on fixed term contract basis. Now, this is being provided in the IR code as well as the code on social security. Now, by and large, these nature of contracts are short-term contracts or casual contracts. In establishments where blue-collared employees have been employed, they are giving way to the white-collared employees, the gold-collar employees comprising chartered accountants, software professionals who are not interested in continuing in employment till retirement. We have this emerging trend of gig workers, platform workers who are known as the collarless workmen because the employers such as Uber, Ola, Swiggy, they are taking a stand that they are not our employees. They are in fact self-employed business partners. Now, the legal issue faced by employers in such cases is going to be in respect of employee misclassification. Very recently, a French court, the highest court in France, the Court of Cassation, has given an order dated 4th March 2020 in case of Uber, holding that an Uber driver is an employee and he cannot be termed as a self-employed partner. Now, in this particular case, the driver's account was deactivated by Uber. The lower court had taken a stand that there was a relationship of subordination between the company and the driver as the driver was following the company's orders. Now, when the matter went to the final court, that is the Court of Cassation, it was held that once the driver goes online on Uber's digital platform, there was a relationship of subordination between the driver and the company, and therefore the driver was providing service as an employee and not as a self-employed worker. There have been 3 tests laid down by the court to decide as to who is a self-employed person. Test one is that the employee should manage his clients himself. The second test is that he should be in a position to set the prices. And the third test is he should choose how to execute a task. Based on these tests, several independent self-employed employees could be reclassified as employees if these tests were even followed by the Indian courts. There is also a possibility of the emergence of the moonlighting clause in employment contracts. That is, secondary jobs, employees also undertaking secondary jobs or part-time jobs, which could be encouraged by employers. Coming to the concept of employees working from home. Currently, on account of COVID-19, many employees are working from home to slow the spread of COVID-19. Now, there has been no central or state laws governing remote working. Under the provisions of the amendment to the Maternity Benefits Act in 2017, there was a provision that after the expiry of 26 weeks, under mutually agreeable terms between an employer and employee, an employer could permit the female employees to work from home. Now, it has no doubt its advantages in terms of greater flexibility, reduction of travel time, but at the same time, there will be certain issues which may arise as far as work from home are concerned. One is relating to the safety and the health of the employees. Now, would the employer be responsible for the health and safety of the employees, assuming that the employee falls down in his house and sustains injury? Now, would the employee be entitled to claim compensation against the employer? Then the issue may arise as far as employers bearing cost of facilities such as internet connection or ergonomic seating or phone connectivity or air conditioning. Even the issue will arise to ascertain as to whether employees are completing the daily tasks or not. Now, as far as this particular work from home aspect is concerned, it would be for the employers to frame suitable policies for employees to work from home. Social distancing currently is the need of the hour. But at the same time, it should not lead to lack of a two-way verbal communication, which is necessary for maintaining the stable emotional and mental health of the employees. In the midst of job losses and pay cuts, there have been few companies who have hiked the salaries of the employees. They have made variable payouts and they have promoted employees in these times. In these unprecedented times, some employers and companies have led with empathy and taken care of employees' interests. Therefore, it will be for managements and unions to embark on a new journey of cooperation and collaboration and not to follow the path of confrontation or conflict. As the saying goes, tough times are ahead. When times get tough, the tough gets going. It is time for the managers to lead the way. If this is adhered to, the industry will progress and jobs and wealth could be created. With this, I conclude my session and I thank all the organizers for giving me this opportunity to speak in this webinar. Thank you.
Thank you, Advocate Bharat Goel, for an excellent perspective at the enterprise level and the issues, the core issues of industrial relations emerging from COVID-19 context. Especially, you are referring to the Disaster Management Act, and possibly these provisions of the Disaster Management Act we have invoked quite a lot in recent times. You were also referring to very important aspect of fixed-term employment. In fact, I would like to, before we begin with the session of question and answer session, I would like to know in a broader context that whether the fixed-term employment as proposed in the Industrial Relations Bill, whether that would be a substitute for contract employment, and to what extent the employer would be enjoying the flexibility, to what extent the employer would be enjoying hire and fire. So we first take up this issue, very quick comments on that, and then we proceed with the question answer section.
Now, as far as the fixed term contract employment is concerned, there is already an amendment to the central standing orders, and it has already come into force in respect of establishments where the appropriate government is the central government. Now, under the IR code, there is also a move to bring in this concept of fixed term contract employment. Now, what is being provided for is that one is that permanent positions, employees who are posted in permanent positions, it will not be permissible for the employers to convert those positions into fixed term contract employments. Now, thereafter, if any employee is appointed on fixed term contract basis, even if he does not complete the qualifying period of employment, he will still be entitled to certain benefits like gratuity. Now, under the Gratuity Act, it is an employee is eligible for gratuity once he completes 5 years of the qualifying service. Now, in case of FTC, even if he works for 1 year or 2 years, he would be entitled on a pro rata basis to benefits like gratuity, to bonus. Then he will also be entitled to benefits on par with those of permanent workmen in case if the permanent workmen are governed by terms of a settlement and if the FTC employees are carrying out work on par with the permanent workmen. Now, this concept as far as FTC is basically recognized where the nature of work is such that it is of a fixed term contract employment. Now, basically, courts have deprecated the practice of employers in engaging employees on fixed term contract basis where the work is of a perennial or a permanent nature. And in such cases, courts have held that where employees who are basically on permanent positions and they are engaged in FTC jobs, then this appointment would amount to an act of unfair labor practice. So therefore, I would say that fixed term employment can never be a substitute for contract labor. And in fact, fixed term employments would be required to be given effect to only when the nature of work is project based, duration based, it is for a specific project or an assignment. In those cases, yes, an employer is justified in engaging employees on a fixed term contract basis.
Thank you very much. And I think that we are proceeding to the next aspect, a very crucial aspect of question answer session, because I'm sure that both these resource persons have set the ball rolling. And now the ball is in the court of the attendees. And may I request Devin Fowler to read out some questions? Maybe
I'll make a point on fixed term contract.
Yeah.
Fixed term contract in India was introduced when Mr. Bajpayee was the Prime Minister and Sahib Singh Verma was the Labour Minister. This was introduced, then what happened is that it got withdrawn when the Congress party came to power. Fixed term contract is prevalent in Gujarat for a very long time. The amendment in the fixed term contract came under the rules of the standing orders, hence became applicable only to the central government. And now in terms of the amendments to the Act in IR bill, they're wanting to bring in fixed term contract. But I totally see fixed term contract, what has happened in certain places in Gujarat, it's a well settled practice that you take instead of contract labor, you take fixed term contract, plus you also take contract labor. What is really happened is in the contract labor, the direct employer was the contractor and the principal employer concept was there. And in most cases, contract labor was paid the minimum wage. In the fixed term contract, the wages that will have to be paid will be the minimum in terms of what is long-term settlement. Now it's a new mode of operation. When the amendment to the standing orders took place, the state of Haryana also brought it in terms of its own state government rules. So it is now to be seen how it comes about. Though I must admit that the unions to a very large extent are opposed to fixed term contract, saying that you are eliminating permanency in jobs.
Yeah. Devin, are you ready? Maybe go for the question answer session. Devin, please.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. And one thing I would like to give a feedback to the facilitator, Dr. Tungare sir and Mehrotra sir and Goyal sir as a panelist, that we are already receiving a lot of congratulatory messages for the excellent insight. So thank you all. And, we have questions over here. So Tungare sir, this is asked by Abhishek Lahudkar, that can the lockdown period treated in the continuous services of the workmen?
Yeah, I think that Advocate Bharat Goyal, you may take up this question.
I'm sorry, can you please repeat this question?
Yeah,
Devin,
please repeat it.
Can the lockdown period treated in the continuous, one second. Can the lockdown period be considered or treated in the continuous services of the workmen?
Yes, it has to be treated as continuous period of service in respect of the workmen, and the notifications issued and the advisories issued by the appropriate authorities. In fact, if you interpret the provisions of those particular notifications, they clearly say that the employees have to be treated as if they are on duty, even in respect of those establishments which have become non-functional on account of COVID-19. Now, no doubt the subject matter is pending before the Supreme Court, but then yes, the period of employment will have to be treated as continuous.
Yeah. Please proceed.
Okay. Thank you.
Next question.
Yes. Is then employer obligated to pay employee of if his or her residence come in containment zone?
Quite interesting question, because the containment zones, the norms are being changed quite often, but containment zone is a crucial aspect of managing COVID-19. And Advocate Bharat Goel, please take it up.
Yes. Now, where the employee is residing in a containment zone, now the stand here would be that he is ready and willing to report for duty, but he's unfortunately not in a position to report for duty on account of the fact that his the place where he resides is a containment zone. So in such a case, the employer is obliged to pay him wages during the period of lockdown, and unless and until the employer makes a request to the employee to avail of his leave, which is lying to his credit, but ordinarily, yes, wages will have to be paid to the employee.
Okay, Devin, when reading the question, also read the name of the person who has asked this question. Attendee.
Yes, sir. So there is another question by Ms. Vaijayanti Pandit. What she's writing here, it's a catch-22 situation. If the workers report to work, get COVID-19, so it's scary at the same time if they don't report to work either. So they won't earn or they lose the job. How can this be managed?
Yes. Now,
Yeah.
where the employer is permitted to carry out his activities. Now, there are cases during the lockdown period where the establishments are non-functional on account of COVID-19. Now, where the establishments are non-functional, then yes, they were still obliged to pay them wages. Now, in the case of an employer where he's permitted to carry out his activities, and in such a case, if the employees do not report for duty, then what is required is the employer has to ensure that he is in a position to provide all the necessary personal protective equipments to the employees to enable them to carry out their duties, and is also required to provide them the transportation facilities. Now, despite doing that, if the employees do not report for duty, then yes, the employer can take a stand that I will not pay wages to those employees who have not reported for duty, as correspondingly, there are certain employees who have reported for duty in such similar situations. So therefore, in such a situation, the act on the employer will be justified where the employees do not report for duty despite providing them the protective equipment.
David, there seems to be one question which is common to both the panelists. Could you
Yes,
repeat
sir.
the question?
Actually, I'm looking at the Q&A question. So I request all the
A
participants
common
to...
question to both of them, I could see on the screen.
Yeah.
A common question to
So-
both of them.
Even
there
the question of people not reporting, there has been this case of BST recently, if you recollect, having read in the newspaper. There were drivers that did not report, so they have charge sheeted them. So disciplinary action certain enterprises will take, because what happens is the buses were permitted to fly by the state government, by the municipal corporation.
Correct.
And if people don't come, and this is a major problem, which happens, that you have been granted permission, there are people coming and there are others that say, now even if I don't come, I'll get salary. And this is the IR situation that comes up. Some places, as Bharat rightly pointed out, enterprises made arrangements for stay of the people near the premise, arrange for transport, and still if they don't come, obviously you have to send a message by SMS to him, cautioning him that you are not coming, you will not get your wages, and if need be, disciplinary action will be taken. Because at the same time, when you have to run an enterprise, you will have to take a stand to do it. You can't just rely only on some people who are prepared to risk their life and come, and the others are not prepared to move out. I concede where somebody is in a containment zone, then you need permission for him to come, and those are other limitations. But there are quite a lot of places where enterprises are in non-containment zones, employees are in non-containment zones, and still some of them don't report for duty. I know of cases because there are certain companies with which I am dealing in the context of certain states. And obviously they will take action.
Yeah,
Okay.
Dr. Mr.
Yeah.
Bharat Goel was referring. Mr. Bharat Goel was referring to the aspect of work from home. I have come across one report from Economic Times, and in that they have been talking that working from home has increased the productivity in the financial sector of the economy, especially the banking sector of the economy. I see a situation, very positive situation, that because of work from home practice, there might be increase in productivity, and one doesn't know that the employees might be having their pie in the increase in productivity. They may say that we would like to have some share of this productivity. That is also possible. How do you react to this, Dr. Rajan Mehrotra?
See, I would take this as a very small sample size on a time period of increase in productivity. We'll have to really see how it operates, because this was a situation in terms of trying to run the business. Most enterprises tried to see if they can ask their persons to work from home. And it is true that working from home does save travel time to a large extent, especially in metropolitan cities, where most people are not staying at a residence near their place of work. People tend to spend roughly in a city like Mumbai as much as on the lower side 2 hours to on the higher side 3.5 hours traveling, going up and down. So work from home does save a lot of travel time, and to that extent there is a gain in productivity. Now whether one will be able to share that benefit is matters to be seen, but there can be other points that people will say, my residence has been converted to office, so pay us rent.
Yeah.
How do you handle that? Now, why I'm interested in bringing this out, if you look traditionally in the pharma industry, the field force, their office was not there in every city. So their office was really their residence from which they communicated and went and called upon doctors, chemists and others. What is going to happen in some of these where you physically cannot go and meet the doctor and you will not be able to work from home, and how do you handle those cases? These are going to become IR issues when I see in terms of settlement being done with medical reps.
Yeah.
So what is happening?
Maybe take a few questions.
Yes, there are some common questions which are there.
Yeah.
So one is, one second. So one common question is what? Yes, one common question by Amar Shinde is what remedies for an employer or IR manager to handle situation wherein group of workers not delivering productivity, which is mentioned in the long-term settlement, and majority workers delivering. So what is the remedy for those who are not delivering as per the settlement, the productivity?
Yeah.
Now, if the workmen are not adhering to the settlement norms and they are not giving the production in terms of the norms laid down as per the settlement, then the employer has recourse to take disciplinary action against those group of workmen. Now, if suppose if it is established that yes, the norms of production are achievable, there are the counterparts of these employees who are in a position to achieve the required norms, whereas this group of workmen is not achieving the required norms of production, then certainly the employer can issue them charge sheets, hold domestic inquiries, and take necessary actions against them. Now, in some settlements, there are also provisions where the workmen, if they fail to give the required norms of production, then the employer also has a right to revert him to the pre-settlement rates of remuneration and benefits. Now, suppose if such a clause is prevalent in the settlement, and if it is established that the norms are achievable and the employees, workmen have failed to basically achieve those required norms, then the employer can even revert them to the pre-settlement rates of remuneration and benefits, and which is without prejudice to even the employer's rights to take appropriate disciplinary action against them.
Yeah, one question which is common to both of you and which was doing doing, in certain circles, this question was being raised, We have state of labor laws in the country, and we have the Disaster Management Act of 2005 and even the Pandemic Act earlier. So there seems to be, if there is a conflict between the two, which one will prevail, and what would be the constitutional position on this issue?
Now, as far as the issue as to whether the Disaster Management Act prevails over the provisions of the Industrial Disputes Act, now this issue is going to be decided for the first time by the Supreme Court once these matters are finally decided, the issue relating to wages. But in this present case, what the authorities have done is that they have invoked the provisions of the Disaster Management Act. And by invoking those provisions, they have directed the employers to pay wages to the employees during the period of lockdown. Now that it appears that that provision could not have been invoked by the appropriate authorities by directing, because the objectives of the Disaster Management Act are totally different. And therefore, the issue as to whether the Disaster Management Act prevails over the Industrial Disputes Act or not, that is yet to be tested by the courts. It has so far not been decided by the courts, and probably it may be decided by the court for the first time in these wages petitions, which are pending before the Supreme Court and which would be heard by the Supreme Court in the month of July. But since that particular order of 29th March 2020 has become inoperative in law with effect from 18th May 2020. So therefore now the employer is at liberty to take recourse to the provisions of the Industrial Disputes Act in the event the employer desires to lay off the employees or to retrench the employees or to take any other steps as provided under that.
Yeah. David, few more questions?
Coming to the previous question.
Yes, sir. Sorry, go ahead.
Dr. Rajan Mehrotra, please.
Please go ahead.
Saying, the previous question on people not complying with a long-term settlement on productivity. These are normal problems in IR that come up because you have a splinter group that does not give it. Now, what one normally does is first calls the union leader and speaks to him and says that this is part of the settlement they should impose. Again, calls the workmen and speaks to them. Quite often, there can be inter-union rivalry, there can be other dimensions to it. So one needs to try and find out, and if it's not resolved, obviously you take appropriate disciplinary action to take and see that the terms of settlement must be complied. Because my own experience is, settlements when they are signed, one must try and see that the terms of settlement are complied immediately before the ink dries. Quite often once a settlement is signed, you need to ensure that each and every part of the settlement is enforced by the management with all the employees. If you keep it pending and don't do, and this continues for a long time, a new norm gets built up and then you have a tough time, even if you want to legally go. See, they can rush to the court, you then take disciplinary action, you want to reduce the wages. They'll file a case under MRTU Pulp Act or bring a stay order against reduction of wages. So all sorts of litigation take place. I am a firm believer, because quite often litigation in India, to a large extent by unions, is used also as a strategy to negotiate. I would basically first take it head on, first talk, and then try to resolve it before I take any disciplinary action. I'll call the chaps. I would keep it standing. And I will see why you don't produce the normal output on the shop. I mean, on an 8-hour shift, I will put a chap standing there all 8 hours and see that why are you missing and why are you not producing. Now, somewhere in management, we must learn to exercise the right of enforcement. I would go to the legal recourse later. I would basically stand and get it done. And I'm a firm believer of this philosophy. Settlements that are signed, unions have to comply and the workmen have to comply and give the production. And let me tell you, it's a management failure of abrogating your rights. Unions take it away. The fellows have been not producing. I don't want to name companies, because I've dealt with them. What are restrictive practices in plants? And then we buy it back by giving money in the long-term settlement. This is a pure failure of management in enforcing things.
Yeah.
I agree that these are problems, but this needs an assertive management to stand and get it done. I will use the law later. If need be, I'll just deduct the wages. And then I will engage lawyers like Bharat Goel to go and fight for me. Or anybody else.
Okay,
Sir,
sir.
Devin, over to you. Please
Yeah.
mention the
Thank
name
you.
of the attendee. Please mention
Yes.
the name
So
of the
this
attendee.
is by Mr. Suj, and this is to Dr. Rajan Mehrotra, directed. How now for many, the workplace has been his or her home. In this situation, whether the labor laws needs to be amended. Example, accident for from working from home covered under the EIC Act. So, what is your insight, sir?
See, first of all, working for home, are they workmen or are they executives? Let's look at this. Because labor laws per se apply to workmen. When you look at the Employee Compensation Act, it applies to everybody. Earlier it was Workmen Compensation Act and then changed to employees. So it does apply to. Now, as far as the labor laws are concerned, work from home has not been defined under any labor law other than from in the Maternity Act. It was brought out that after in the modification to the Maternity Act, when it was extended, it was said that the lady can work from home. Bharat Goel can correct me. Now,
Yes.
why I'm trying to say is that to this day, this was not the type of norm by which labor laws were built. It's a new type of work relationship coming up. Obviously, a question will come if I fall down while work from home and work from home is my place of work and I have got a fracture. Am I to be treated on accident duty? Now, only thing is the liability of the employer will not come for a simple reason. In your home, the layout of your furniture is by you, not by the employer. None of the things have been given. Maybe the employer might have only given the laptop. And in certain cases, this may also be owned by you. So this is a gray area that will come up, but it's not something that at a home you sit down and have an accident because you're not working on a machine. I think we must distinguish between what is palatable work. I'm intentionally bringing out because home-based worker is an ILO convention that defines what is home-based worker. And if you look at the BD Act, there is a provision in terms of those people working from home and they are covered up in terms of it. There is a legislation to that effect in where there is a lot of this decentralized working from home which takes place when you look at a large amount of garments that are made at residence of people, where each one is supplied with material and they work from home. But this is to a large extent covered under the informal sector and the labor laws did not apply. My own hunch is work from home is becoming a new norm and some of this will either get tested by case law if there is no legislation or in the new code, some of this may get added.
Over to you, Devin.
Yeah, thank you, sir. There is one question by Deepali Shinde. We are into retail industry and require our employees to work at store essential services. In case an employee is pregnant, can we insist her to attend her duties?
No, in such a case, if an employee is pregnant, then she will be entitled to her leave of 26 weeks as per the provisions of Maternity Benefits Act. So till such time she is entitled to leave, she is going to report for duty and thereafter avail of the maternity leave under the provisions of the amended Maternity Benefits Act.
Yeah, maybe pick up another question.
Yeah. This is one by Mahendra Shahane, and he is just putting a question to both Dr. Mehrotra and Advocate Goel, sir. So, is fixed-term employment may create a social problem?
What is that? May create what?
Is fixed-term employment may create a social problem?
Yeah. You know, fixed-term employment, Advocate Goel, will as you rightly said, it is not going to be a substitute for contract employment. But in case of fixed term employment, if the tenure is say for 3 years or tenure is for 2 years, and somebody is in the age group of 30 to 45, constantly there is going to be anxiety, what will happen to me after that? And possibly it may create some sort of social problem. So do you think in that direction, or there is a possibility of renewal of a contract and possibly some sort of an assurance can be given to an employee?
Now, as far as this issue is concerned, no doubt if the tenure of employment is fixed term and he is utilized only for a period of, say, 1 year or 2 years, and thereafter the contract comes to an end, it's a genuine fixed term contract, and the contract comes to an end, and his services cannot be utilized by the company thereafter. Now, certainly it would give rise to social issues, because how he will be considered in society, he's unemployed, he's without a job, etc. So certainly it could pose some difficulties to him, but then this may be the norm which may be followed by employers henceforth, because the employment model is going to considerably change in the next few months or hereafter, whereby employers will be either engaging people on short-term contracts, fixed-term contracts, there will be moonlighting clauses, there will be dual employment, part-time employment. So these forms of employment will become more prevalent in the economy. So this could give rise to some social issues.
Dr. Rajan Mehrotra,
I would like to mention.
I for one strongly feel that what is economically desirable may not be socially justifiable. Do you think that in the present context of a new normal, these social issues are going to be very dominant? How do you look at it?
Let me look at fixed term employment from two angles. Fixed term employment has always been prevalent at senior level. Look at a managing director of a company. He's only employed for a fixed term employment contract. He either gets a 3-year contract, 5-year contract, and if it's not renewed, he goes. This is one. I recollect when I joined the ILO service. In ILO, you join in a fixed term contract, it is no permanent employment. I did get absorbed in permanent. If I look at the Indian Institute of Management, the directors of all management institutes, or even a director of IIT, is on a fixed term contract, which is a tenure appointment. But because they are in government service, they keep their tenure in terms of the earlier service and come on deputation. Now, in a private sector, you don't get this type of deputation when you go. Now, keeping the executive level out, but looking at fixed term employment, fixed term employment is going to become a new form of employment which will take place at a bargainable category level. And that's why it was brought in terms of the Industrial Standing Orders Act. Now, when you look in terms of it, the NEEM trainee is equally something similar with large number of companies. And let me tell you, the number of manufacturing companies now using NEEM trainees as a methodology of their employment is substantial. And the NEEM trainees have been there, the age limits have been relaxed, and whether you are a matriculate, non-matriculate to a postgraduate can be taken under NEEM. What is happening? Fixed employment will become a type of workman employment that certain companies may use. As Bharat Goel rightly mentioned, that in terms of it, it should be on projects, but some may also not use it on projects, use it as a methodology of bringing in a workforce and then terminating it. I have seen this very heavily prevalent in Gujarat. And what happens is that they go and get a job in another company. It is a labor force based on fixed term employment. So, see, look at it. Is contract labor a social issue when people get terminated? I'm just bringing this out. What is happening, like contract labor as a mode of employment, fixed term employment, one will have to really see how it operates in the country. It has not really taken off as yet.
No, as Advocate Bharat Goel was rightly referring, and I think that points need to be highlighted, that even in case of fixed term contract or fixed term
They will get all
employment,
the benefits.
they will be entitled for certain benefits. And I think that aspect is very, very vital. If an employee during the first fixed term contract is entitled, say, for gratuity, I don't know, you can throw light on that.
He'll be entitled for gratuity. That is the provision under the FT.
Yeah. So possibly,
The qualifying criteria of 5 years is not there.
yeah. Maybe
Okay.
Sir,
yeah.
I would like to ask a question to Goyal sir. During the fixed time term of employment, an accident takes place before completion of the fixed term. Is that person or employee is entitled for all the benefits under the labor laws?
Yes. The answer is yes. See, he is still an employee of the company. You see, this fixed term contract employee is not a case of, an employment where he's employed with a contractor. He's your direct employee. He's on the rolls of the employer. The only difference is that his appointment is for a specified period of time. So therefore, he's entitled to the statutory benefits like PF. If he meets with an accident injury, then he will become entitled to the benefits of under the statutory law applicable to him. So he will be entitled to these benefits as an employee of the employer.
Thank you.
Devin, since the time is short,
So, yeah, we have
we
very
can
short
take a
time.
few questions.
Yeah, exactly. We have around 58 questions, so overwhelming response. So we'll take a few questions. So this question is by Prafulla Bargaze, and he is mentioning that the question is pertaining to non-workman category. Can an employee demand return to workplace while employer has extended work from home? As per the terms of appointment and Shop and Establishment Act, generally, workplace is the office place. Whether employer can unilaterally impose work from home conditions.
Now, if the nature of work to be performed by that employee is such that he can carry out the work from home, then he can call upon the employee to work from home. Now, it is only in such circumstances where the employee is unable to work from home. Now, what could be the circumstance? The first circumstance could be that he stays in a very small room, one room apartment house, and there are a large number of family members in the house. He is unable to perform or carry out work effectively. In that case, he can make a request to the employer, and it is for the employer to accede to that request or not. So otherwise, in the normal course, if the employer calls upon him to work from home, and if the nature of work is such that he can perform from home, then certainly he will be required to carry out his duties while working from home. But in some exceptional cases, as I mentioned, if there is a genuine issue where he's unable to do it, then it would be a different situation.
Okay. Tungare sir, can I move to the next question?
Yeah, please proceed.
So this is by Vidyananda Joshi. Is any other state government order like the Karnataka government to provide special leave for employees who have tested COVID positive? Is no such order in that case? Can the employer ask such employees to avail leave from their leave account?
To the best of my knowledge, I think it is only the state of Karnataka which has come out with this 28 days additional provision. Otherwise, if any employee contracts COVID, then he has to avail of his leave and lying to his credit. That is what the position is as far as the other states are concerned, except Karnataka.
Sir, there is one more state. I think Uttar Pradesh also is one more state where the COVID positive patient entitled for 28 days. So one more state. Two states. Yeah.
Okay. So Karnataka and Uttar Pradesh, then it could be Karnataka and UP.
There is one more. Yes. There is one more question.
2-3 more questions.
Yeah, we can take another 2 questions and then we can, have the final say. So by Prakash Singh, so trade union does not want even to surrender 25% income for deferment due to COVID-19 in CPSU like HIL at Rasayani for survival? How to deal with this situation?
Now, in such a situation, if the union does not agree, even for a certain percentage in terms of deferment of wages, then if there is no agreement between the parties, then as laid down by the Supreme Court in the interim order, then the parties can approach the office of the Labor Commissioner's office and seek their intervention. If it results in a settlement, it is fine. If it does not, then the parties will have to wait for the final outcome of the Supreme Court judgment.
Okay. The second last question by Aniket Rinde. As per the government guideline, medical health insurance is mandatory. So the question is, what about those workers who are already covered by ESIC? Does it necessary to have different insurance policy?
No, it is not a requirement to have an insurance policy in respect of those employees who are covered under ESI Act. So those employees who are covered under ESI Act will get the benefits as far as COVID-19 is concerned. Now, it is also now not mandatory to have the insurance coverage because the Ministry of Home Affairs in their notification of 17th May 2020 has withdrawn that particular requirement in terms of mandatory insurance coverage. But still, if the employer comes out with a policy in terms of, say, term insurance coverage, or covers them under the Mediclaim policy, he is certainly at liberty to cover the employees under Mediclaim or term insurance policy. I think the term insurance policy coverage is to the tune of, say, 1 lakh or 2 lakhs of rupees. You get the coverage, and those employees could be covered under the policy.
Okay. And
I
maybe,
think that
yes.
we have. Would you like to take up one more question, Devin? Or should we?
No, I think a last question we can take by Dinesh Pandey. So leave encashment and bonus are eligible to those workers who were not working during lockdown period, and non-working days count for that. So is that something the right on his part to think about this for leave encashment?
Now, as far as leave encashment during this period of lockdown, and similarly bonus also as far as the period of lockdown, now an argument could always be taken that the employee has not worked, and therefore for that period, bonus should.
He was already enjoying leave.
Yes, they were already enjoying. So that would.
Yeah, I think that's very tough question paper for the panelists. And as normally we say in the exam system, last year's questions are being repeated. So this is not possible because the situation is very peculiar. COVID situation is unprecedented in human history. And possibly, though the panel have done an excellent job, still then many questions might be lingering. New questions may emerge in the new normal. And all of us, we are looking forward for an amicable settlement. I like the approach of both the panelists. Advocate Bharat Goel was referring that we have to move from confrontation to consultation. We have to move towards negotiation, and possibly the collective bargaining has got a role to play. The interim order of the Supreme Court of India, the Apex Court of India, when the Apex Court is expecting that the parties, they need to come together and have negotiation, I think that Dr. Rajan Mehrotra will agree with me that we have the old classical bipartite model of industrial relations, what is known as British model of industrial relations.
Yes, we need
in the present context, we should look more for social dialogue. We should look more for consultation, negotiation, and we have to move very fastly and understand the situation that both the sides, that is employers and employees, they need to understand that this is an unprecedented situation, and therefore they need to sit together they will have to create win-win situation. And possibly the win-win situation, as Advocate Bharat Goel was mentioning, that's the only solution in the present context. With this, personally, I am thankful to both of them because at a very short notice, I got in touch with them. And let me take liberty in saying that they have done an excellent work, possibly the score is very high in exam. And I'm sure that we are looking forward for their association, continuous association with such kind of webinars to be conducted by the Alumni Association. With these few words, personally, I'm obliged that Dr. Rajan Mehrotra and Advocate Bharat Goel, you have joined this panel at a very short notice, and very innovative points you have brought into focus. With these few words, may I request the organizers to proceed with the formality of vote of thanks.
I request Advocate Prakash Devdas to give a vote of thanks.
Yeah.
I'm the General Secretary of the Alumni Association. You hear me?
Yes, yes,
You hear
we
me?
can hear you.
Hear me? Hello?
Yes,
Hello?
we can hear you, Advocate
Yeah.
Devdas.
It is an excellent exercise by the panelists and the people who have given very good response for this joining this webinar. I see that this, although this is the first time organized by the Alumni Association, the team of Hill and all those who have done excellent work. Today, the speakers who are panelists, Dr. Rajan Mehrotra, his experience we got everything, and I feel that we have to change according to situation, and we have to change to come to a webinar, because otherwise we would not have been. We have been trying to hold a seminar at the institute's hall, auditorium. But the COVID-19 made us to do this thing. Bharat Goel, my learned friend, has done excellent, and I am very much thankful both of them. And Dr. Rajan Tungare, who is ex-director, former director of the institute, who has handled the entire webinar excellently. Thank you very much, all three. I also thank Prabhakar and the team, Prajakta, and I got one point is their conclusion, which we can see is that there cannot be confrontation now. There must be consultation, cooperation, and people should know that employer and employees, we should survive, because it's a global scenario, and therefore we cannot go away from this. We will have our entire business, enterprises, and industries.
I think
You're not able to hear. Yeah, I think
Prakash Devdas is not able. There is a network problem. So I take the opportunity to give my thanks to everybody whosoever has participated in this webinar, especially the honorable guest speaker, Dr. Rajan Mehrotra, then Advocate Bharat Goel, Professor Director Rajesh Tungare. We had an excellent webinar. Thank you very much that. And I declare with this, yeah.